Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. How are things going, guys? I hope that all of you are fine and alert on your body health. Well, here I am, Wahyu Rakhmadiah. My ID number is T2019-6164, and I am from English Education Department 4 of UINHAS Jember. Well, in this video opportunity, I would like to accomplish my final term task in Qualitative Research Methods in Language Education subject. Well, in this chance, I would like to bring a topic which is about phenomenological research material. And in this, before we go on to comprehend deeply about the phenomenological research, let me give you the introduction or background definition about the phenomenological research. Well, as a research methodology, phenomenology is uniquely positioned to help health professions, education scholars learn from the experience of others. Also, which has already been taught by our lecturer, Ma'am Safhatin Humaida, who had already explained us or comprehended us about the phenomenological research means that a form of qualitative research that focuses on the study on the individual's life experience within the world. So although it is a powerful approach for inquiry, the nature of this methodology is often intimidating to HPE research or health professions education researchers. So, in the phenomenological study describes the meaning for several individuals of their lived experience of concepts or a phenomenon. So, the phenomenologists focus on describing what all participants have in common as they experience phenomenon. The basic purpose of phenomenology is to reduce individual experience with a phenomenon to a description of the universal essence. So, from the introduction I've given you, what you get from it? What does the phenomenological research mean? Yes, you're right. Phenomenology is a qualitative research approach that is uniquely positioned to support this inquiry. I emphasize it to you in order you will learn it deeply. However, as an approach for engaging in health professions education, research phenomenology does not have a strong following. It is easy to see why, because to truly understand phenomenology requires developing an appreciation for the philosophies that underpin it. Those philosophies theorize the meaning of human experience. In other words, engaging in phenomenological research requires the scholar to become familiar with the philosophical moorings of our interpretations of human experience. This may be a daunting task but Dr. Zadam, as the scientist said, learning from the experience of others would be easy. In simple terms, that phenomenology can be defined as an approach to research that seeks to describe factually the essence of phenomenon by exploring it from the perspective of those who have experienced. What is the goal of phenomenological research? The goal of phenomenology is to describe the meaning of this experience, both in terms of what experience and how it was experienced. So actually there are different kinds of phenomenology, each rooted in different ways of conceiving of the what and how human experience. In other words, each approach of phenomenology is rooted in a different school of philosophy. To choose a phenomenological research methodology requires the scholar to reflect on the philosophy they embrace. Given that there are many different philosophies that scientists can embrace, it is not surprising that there is a broad set of phenomenological traditions that a researcher can draw from. In this manuscript, we highlight that the transcendental and hermeneutic approaches to phenomenology, but a broader phenomenological landscape exists. So, what are the types of phenomenological approach? Yes, there are two kinds. From this short understanding, we now address how two kinds are transcendental phenomenology and hermeneutic phenomenology. We now address how transcendental is the descriptive and hermeneutic is the interpretive. In Husserl's, from the first that Husserl's define transcendental phenomenology is sometimes referred to as a descriptive approach. Why? Because the researcher's goal is to achieve transcendental subjectivity, which has a state wherein the impact of the researcher on the inquiry is constantly assessed and preconceptions naturalized, so that they do not influence the object of study. So also the researcher is to stand apart and not allow her subjectivity to inform the descriptions offered the participants. This leaves dimensions of experience is best approached by the researcher who can achieve the state of the transcendental self, which it is the state of transcendental. The researcher is able to assess the participants' experience the phenomenon reflectively, that is, without resorting to categorization and conceptualization, and quite often includes what is taken for granted or those things that are common sense. So the transcendental brings no definition, expectation, assumption, and hypothesis to the study. Instead, that in this state, the researcher assumes the position of the participants' experience to develop an understanding of the essence of a phenomenon. In other words, that the challenge is to engage the study of a person's lived experience and the phenomenon that highlights the universal essence of that phenomenon. This requires that the researcher to suspend her own attitudes, also the beliefs and suppositions, in order to focus on the participant's experience of the phenomenon and identify the essence of the phenomenon itself. Well, and the second approach is the hermeneutic phenomenology approach. As I have already told you that the hermeneutic phenomenology is interpretive phenomenology that originates from the work of Martin Heidegger, which began his career in theology, but then moved into academic as student of philosophy. While Heidegger's philosophical inquiry began in alignment with Husserl's work, he later challenged several key aspects of Husserl's transcendental phenomenology. So, actually, the foundational break from his predecessors was the focus of phenomenological inquiry. Actually, with this focus on human experience and how it is lived, hermeneutic phenomenology moves away from Husserl's focus on the acts of attending, perceiving, recalling, and thinking about the world, and on human beings as knowers of phenomenon. In contrast, that Heidegger is interested in human beings as actors in the world, and so focuses on the relationship between an individual and her or his life world. So instead of the bracketing of the researcher's subjective perspective, hermeneutic phenomenology recognized that the researcher, like the research subject, cannot be rid of his or her life work. Instead, that the researcher's past experience and knowledge are valuable guides to the inquiry. So it is the researcher's education and knowledge base that lead him or her to consider a phenomenon or experience worthy of investigation. To ask the researcher also to take an unbiased approach to the data is inconsistent with the hermeneutic phenomenology's philosophical roots. Well, in this study, that instead the second approach, which is hermeneutic phenomenology, is working from this tradition, should openly acknowledge their preconceptions and reflect on how their subjectivity is part of the analysis process. So, from the explanation I've given you, how to do the phenomenological research. Yes, here I would like to give you the procedures for conducting phenomenological research. First, the researcher determines if the research problem is best examined using a phenomenological approach, while the type of the problem best suited of this form of research is one in which it is important to understand several individuals' common or shared experience of a phenomenon. So it would be important to comprehend these common experiences in order to develop practices or policies, or to develop a deeper understanding about the features of the phenomenon in phenomenological research itself. Well, and second is a phenomenon of interest to study, such as anger, professionalism, what it means to be underweight, or what it means to be wrestler, or what is meant to be identified. And the researcher also must recognize and specify the broad philosophical assumptions of phenomenology. For example, one could write about the combination of objective reality and individual experience. These lived experience are furthermore conscious and directed toward an object. To fully describe how participants view the phenomenon, the researcher must break out as much as possible with their own experience balance. And the next is data are collected from the individuals who have experience of the phenomenon. The data collection in phenomenological studies consists of in-depth interviews and multiple interviews with participants. So, in conducting the analysis, Polkinghorne recommends that researchers interview from 5 to 25 individuals who have all their experience the phenomenon. And the next is the participant are asked to broad general questions like, what have you experienced in terms of phenomenon? What context of or situations have typically influenced or affected your experience of the phenomenon? Something like that you can ask. Other open-ended questions may also be asked that especially focus attention on gathering data that will lead to a textual description and a structural description of the experience itself, and ultimately provide an understanding of the common experience of the participants. And phenomenological data analysis steps are generally similar for all psychological phenomenologists who discuss the methods. Because building on the data from the first and second research questions, data analysis who through the data and highlight significant statements, sentence, or quotes that provide an understanding of how the participant experienced the phenomenon. The next is from the structural and textural descriptions, which the researchers then write a composite description that presents the essence of the phenomenon, called the essential or invariant structure, something like that. So primarily that this passage focuses on the common experience of the participants. For example, it means that all experiences have an underlying structure, which it is a descriptive passage maybe, or it is a long paragraph or so, and the reader should come away from the phenomenology with the spelling. I understand better what it is like for someone to experience that, something like that. So the challenge from it that a phenomenology provides a deep understanding of a phenomenon as experienced by several individuals. Knowing some common experience can be valuable for groups such as therapists, teachers, health personnel, and policymakers, perhaps. So the phenomenology can involve the streamlined form of data collection by including only single and or multiple interviews with participants. So on the other hand, phenomenology requires that at least some understanding of the broader, which philosophical assumption, and this should be identified by the researcher, and the participants in the study need to be careful chosen to be individuals who have all experienced and the phenomenon in the question, so that the researcher is in the end can forge a common understanding. In conclusion, that incorporating phenomenological research methodologies into happy scholarship creates opportunities to learn from the experience of others, which the phenomenological research can broaden our understanding of the complex phenomena involved in learning, exactly behavior and communication that are germane to our field. But success in this efforts is dependent upon both improved awareness of the potential value of these approaches and enhanced familiarization with the underlying philosophical orientation and methodological approach of phenomenology. Perhaps most critically, health professions scholars must construct research process that align with the tenets of the methodology chosen and the philosophical roots that underlie it. This alignment is philosophical roots that for establishing the researcher rigor and trustworthiness. And maybe this is explanation from me about the phenomenological research analysis. Thank you very much for your nice attention, and last I say wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.